This is an SM Media production.
Things are gonna get better real soon. Yeah, I'ma just do me, you just do you. I swear it's gonna get better real soon. Don't let anyone tell you what you should do. I got a clear view. We're gonna make it soon. Just keep pushing through.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of The Sit Down right here in SM Media. I'm Scott McPike, delighted to be your host as always. A very special guest in this week's episode. I'm absolutely honoured to welcome the former Scotland manager, Craig Brown. Craig, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you onto the show. Thanks very much for joining me.
Well, thanks, Scott. I'm actually honoured to be on your show, and I'm looking forward to it. Thanks very much.
How are you? How's everything been since?
Well, I had a wee health scare a few months ago, but I've recovered. So I had an aneurysm, AAA they call it, the abdominal aortic aneurysm.
Right.
Quite a fancy name, but I'm very lucky that the Aberdeen Royal Infirmary looked after me exceptionally well.
Brilliant.
And I've got clearance now. I said to the surgeon, "You like this?" I said, "Can I play golf?" He said, "Well, I think you should do putting." Then he said, "Once you've been putting, try a few short iron shots." And I said, "What about my driver?" "Your body will tell you." So my body's told me I can now use the driver. So not very well, but I'm trying it.
Brilliant. It's been a very, very busy season in Scottish football. What's been your kind of thoughts of the season so far?
Well, it's a frustrating season for me, because I'm the club ambassador at Aberdeen. I was a director until the new owners came in.
Right.
And Dave Cormack took over at Aberdeen, and he got rid of 4 of us from the board.
Right.
And they brought in men with real money, 2 Americans. So 4 of us stepped down. He asked me to stay. I said, "What do you want me to do?" And he said, "I'd like you to stay as the club ambassador." And therefore, I'm at every Aberdeen game, home and away, and I represent the club at various things. If they need someone to go to a funeral, I go and represent the club with things like that. And I phone. I'm on the phone a lot to elderly or distant supporters. So I visit the hospital to see supporters. So, I've not got anything to do with the team any longer. And of course, a new manager coming in. I don't know who he'll be, but it's a disappointment whenever there's a change of manager.
Yeah, definitely. What was your thoughts when you heard the news about Derek McInnes leaving last night? Was it a shock?
It was a shock. Well, I wouldn't say it was too big a surprise because there was a bit of criticism of him.
Yeah.
But I thought he'd done well. But the ambition is great up there. I know that. Because I went and when I went, they were bottom of the league certainly. And we to save them. But Derek has more than saved them. He's kept them in a very comfortable position.
Yeah. Brilliant.
But there's an ambition there that it's not just the board that's got them, it's the fans have a great ambition. And Alec Ferguson spoiled them.
Aye, definitely. Definitely. We'll touch a bit on your early playing career as well. What were your kind of first experiences with football? Who were your heroes growing up when you were starting out in football?
Well, my early experiences were I was brought up in Hamilton, and I was an Hamilton Accy supporter, and there's a ball boy at the old Douglas Park where Hamilton played. And my father was into sport and football in the winter and golf in the summer. And therefore, he encouraged me. And there was a bit of waste ground at the side of the house. So I was out there and my pals, we played every night. And I was a good schoolboy player. I think it was all downhill after that. But, I played for the Lanarkshire schoolboys. I was at school at Hamilton. And I played for the Lanarkshire schoolboys and the Scottish schoolboys. And, I think my claim to fame in football is I played with the 2 men in Scotland who have held the European Cup aloft. One is a player and one is a manager.
Right, okay.
And the first ever European Championships, Celtic, and Billy McNeil was the captain. Now, I played in the Lanarkshire schools and the Scottish schools team with Billy. And then the next year, the man that won it as a manager, Alec Ferguson.
Yeah.
Alec was in the team. And it's a strange thing. Well, it's not really so strange that, when you play with a guy, and you maybe travel and you're in a hotel and you maybe share a room, you retain that friendship the rest of your life. So I retained the friendship until Billy passed away, sadly, with Billy. And I'm not name dropping, I'm trying not to anyway, that I retained a friendship with Sir Alec. I've got to remember to call him Sir Alec now.
Yeah.
Simply because we played in the same team as boys together.
Yeah.
And so I've always been friendly with Sir Alec.
Brilliant. You then get your big kind of dream move to Rangers, and what was it like getting in there at a young age?
Well, it wasn't a dream move to me.
Right, okay.
My father didn't like Rangers. I didn't like Rangers. And
Okay.
I had a lot of offers as a boy. As I said to you, I'm not trying to be immodest, but I was a good boy player.
Yeah.
I was never a good enough senior player, but I was a good boy player. And everybody wanted to sign me.
Yeah.
And the headline in the paper was Rangers sign boy they all wanted. Now, I'll be honest and admit it. I went to Rangers for money.
Right, okay.
They gave me a huge amount of money to go because I was, in those days, I was a kind of boy wonder, and I was doing well. And I signed for Rangers. Scott Simon was the manager.
Mm-hmm.
And that was 1957-8 season, giving my age away. I was 17 and I signed for Rangers. And I was never, well, what they did was in those days, they put you out junior.
Yeah.
I was a provisional signing and they put me to play in Wishaw and Coltness United. That was the team that Tommy Gemmell was put out. The fashion in those days was the route to the team was you play junior, then you play in the reserves for a year, and if you're any good, you get in the first team.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a year junior, and I was a good junior player. I was picked in the Scottish junior international squad when I was only 18, which was good. And I was in the last eight. One of the papers had a Junior Player of the Year award. Now the boy that won it played for Irvine Meadow, and he was Bobby Carroll. You're far too young to remember, but Bobby signed for Celtic.
Mm-hmm. I
signed for Rangers. So I was a good junior player, and I'm a great fan of junior football.
Yeah.
And I always say that when Celtic Lisbon Lions won the European Cup, 10 of the 11 played junior football.
Uh-huh.
And if you look at that, only one in that team, it was Jim Craig. His way was Glasgow University, then to Celtic.
Right, okay.
But the rest of they all played junior. Kenny Dalglish, Cumbernauld Juniors. And the one that I always refer to is Stevie Chalmers, who scored the winning goal. He was a junior player for Ashfield when he was 23 in Celtic signed.
Is that right?
Yeah. So, I mean, and Bobby Lennox from down Ayrshire, played for Ardea.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the way to go. Anyway, I'll take a long-winded story to tell you that I went to Rangers as a boy, and you're like this. One of the senior players, after 3 or 4 days, I was so nervous, and it was a very imposing dressing room. It's still the same dressing room. The pegs are so high.
Yeah.
I think they make you feel small. You have to stand in the bench to put my clothes up, and they put you alphabetically.
Right. Okay.
There was Baird, Sammy Baird, Baxter, Jim Baxter, Brown, and Caldo.
Brilliant.
Now there was 4 players there in the alphabet, the top of the alphabet, and 3 of them were stars, particularly 2.
Yeah.
Caldo was a captain. He was a Scotland international, and Sammy Baird was a very good player, and Baxter was the hero.
Yeah.
So, and I was stuck in among them, and I was so nervous. And after 3 or 4 days training, one of the players, I better not name him, he came to me and says, "Come here, son. Did you win a competition to train with Rangers?" So I don't think he thought it was very good. I think he was right. And Johnny Hubbard was there.
Right, yeah.
Johnny's a nice guy, and Johnny heard him. And Johnny says, "Brownie, leave him to me. Leave him to me." And in actual fact, I can tell you who it was. It was Sammy Baird. Big Sammy was and I played the same position as Sammy.
Right.
So he didn't know that I wasn't good enough. He thought I might have been. So he's putting me down. So Johnny says, "Leave that big bat Sammy to me." And I said, "Okay, Johnny." So he says, "Come to the game on Saturday, the first game." And they were playing, I remember, Dunfermline.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a communal bath in those days. Showers now.
Yeah.
The whole team in the bath, no substitutes. Only 11 players played. And I'm not playing, of course, but I'm in the dressing room, and Johnny's in the bath, and he waves me through. and he winks at me and he says, Sammy. And Big Sam looked at him and says, Sammy, there was 62,823 here today. And Big Sammy says, wait a minute, Hubby, how do you know? 60, how do you know? The game's just finished, you're telling me the crowd. And wee Johnny says, he's winking at me, he says, Sammy, I was counting them, waiting on a pass from you. He agreed. Well, and he tried to put Sammy down. And afterwards he says, how did you like that, Brownie? I says, that was good. Johnny. And Hubby was always very good to the young boys.
It was a brilliant.
And most of the players were good for the young boys. You know, Caldo and Shearer was the captain, and then it was John Gregg was a young boy with me.
Yeah.
These ages with me and John and I. So it was a very powerful team at the time. And, you know, I've got the team photographs. There's 3 trophies at the front of, you know, I was there only 2.5 years. And I never got a game in the team. You know, I was not good enough. And I went on loan to Dundee.
Yeah.
That was a good move because the manager was Bob Shankly.
Yeah.
And he had tried to sign me for third Lanark when he was a third Lanark manager.
Okay.
And he remembered me. And he saw I wasn't getting a game for Rangers. And the last thing I want to say about Rangers is this, that, you know, I admit I wasn't good enough, but I got an injury there. And they didn't have a qualified physiotherapist.
Right, okay.
Glasgow Rangers. And I had a knee injury. And when I went to Dundee, the physio and the doctor looked at me, how long have you had that? I said, oh, I got it 18 months. What? And that was negligence. Now, that knee, that's my excuse for not being a good player. Knee, I've now got a replacement knee. You know, I had to get, eventually I had 5 operations when I was playing. I was never going to be Billy Bremner or Jim Baxter, but I would have been less bad if I hadn't had a bad knee.
And you mentioned Bob Shankly. Just how good was he for you in your development when you went to Dundee?
Well, he was the man that looked after me, and you know, we all the players. You know, he's like his brother Bill at Liverpool. Bob was the older brother, and Bob had won the championship with Dundee in Scotland, and he also got Dundee to the semi-final of the European Cup. Now Dundee, it's hard to believe. And we beat the German champions, the Portuguese champions, and the Belgian champions. And we were only beaten in the semi-final by AC Milan. So, and that was 3 years before Celtic won it. So you know, Shankly was a marvellous manager, great football guy, and we all the players respected him. You know, he had the Ayrshire, he had the good Ayrshire. He never called me Craig, ever. He always called me Christ Craig. Christ Craig. And even if I had the occasional good game, I said, Christ Craig, that wasn't bad today, son. But the lovely one, I'll tell you quickly about Shankly. He was a stickler for smart turnout and discipline, and timekeeping. And we all had to take the laces out of our boots after the game. And the laces went into the wash. There were white laces in those days, black boots, white. And the laces were washed. And you could take the studs out your boots. You'd unscrew them, and when you polished your own boots, you'd polish the sole of the boot. You know,
really?
But when he was doing the team photo, he was so meticulous. And he would put the good players in the middle of the photo.
Right.
You know, the international players. He would have the Alec Hamilton, Alan Gilzine, Ian Muir. They were the good boys. They were in the middle. And I'm standing at the side with my pal Dougie Houston. I'm saying, are we going to get in this photo? And then he would say, Christ Craig. He would point at the seat at the end of the front row. He said, put your arse down there, son. And then he would say, a pair of scissors will get rid of you. They took the photograph at the start of the season in August, July or August, and it was a calendar. And of course, if you weren't too good a player, too hot, or if he thought he might get rid of you before Christmas, he'd put you at the end of the row. A pair of scissors will get rid of you. So I didn't get rid of me. He kept me nearly 6 years, but the boys used to laugh the way Shankly spoke to me. I mean, I could do a whole podcast about Shankly, but you know, the press would phone him and say, "What's your team, Mr. Shankly?" They say, "Our Greta hasn't picked it yet." Or he would say the same as the Courier, which was the local paper.
Brilliant.
Anyway, I'm taking you back.
Brilliant. The one thing I want to mention that will bring back memories was a music group called Hammy and the Hamsters. How did that come about? What was that like?
Well, I wish I had the tape for you. It came about because you know, nowadays what happens is, and you see a lot of publicity because Celtic, unfortunately, were criticised. They went to Dubai.
Yeah.
Nowadays, when there's a bad weather, a winter break, they go to La Manga or Dubai or some of these warm places.
Yeah.
But Dundee had a lot of money because they were very successful, and they had sold players for money. So they were. And where did we go when we had a winter break? It was just for the week, of course. Where did we go? Crieff Hydro or Fisher's Hotel in Pitlochry.
Brilliant.
And that was. And you would arrive for training on Monday morning, and they would see a bus out there. What's happening here? And when you went in, Shankly's secretary would say, phone the missus, phone the digs, phone back and tell them you're away for the week. That was the warning we got. And so where did we go? We went to Pitlochry. Instead of, it wasn't Dubai or anything like that, we went to Pitlochry and we were in the hotel there. And of course it was dull and the television was black. It was poor stuff. There was nothing doing. So at night, you weren't allowed out because you were a prisoner, because the manager was strict. So to stay in, so Alec Hamilton, one of the players, good player, international player, Hammy was a pianist.
Right.
And he was a good singer. So he would go to the piano. And the Beatles were big time at the time.
Yeah.
So the boys would all, to spend the evening, we'd all sing the Beatles stuff. Can't buy me along, you know. And Hammy would play the piano. And there were old dears there recuperating. It was a kind of care home as well.
Right, okay.
At the hotel. And one of them, her son, was the band leader in the Continental Ballroom in Dundee.
Right.
And he came to visit his mother. And we were singing that night. And she said, you're quite good singers. And well, I said, we're no bad. And his name, I remember his name was Johnny Battersby.
Right.
And Johnny said, will you come and sing in the dance hall? Well, he managed to get 6 of us from the team. Hammy was one of them. So we went to the dance hall and we did and the Saturday night after a game, we were going and so that started us, and he wrote 2 songs for us. He was a songwriter as well.
Yeah.
And we had a 16-piece orchestra playing. So we would do some singing on a Saturday night or other nights when they asked us, and eventually the television heard that we were doing it, and Dundee the next year were in the cup final against Rangers. So you can imagine we made a record, and it's actually, I wish I'd had it. I wish I had it for you. I've still got the old 45, you know, the disc.
Yeah.
But it was quite popular, and you wouldn't believe how I'm saying it myself. I'm not saying much about my football ability, but I thought the record was pretty good.
Brilliant. You went on to Falkirk after that, and obviously injuries kind of take their toll. Like how far do you think you could have went as a player if injuries didn't play a part? Well,
there was a time when I was playing, I dare I say it, quite well. You know, we played, for example, the year we won the league, we played Celtic at Celtic Park, and amazingly, you know, it's only Clint Finlay. I was man of the match, you know, against, and that was a lot of the Celtic team that won the European, the same team 4 years later, and it was Bobby Lennox's first game for Celtic.
Is that right?
And that was and I was playing for Dundee, and Bobby always jokes with me because Shankly told me, this guy you're playing against, he knew everything, Bob Shankly, the manager. Now, nobody had heard of Bobby Lennox, RD Recreation, in his first game for Celtic. So he's going over the team and he says, this guy you're playing against today, tossed up with a sparrow for legs, and the sparrow won. Which was wrong, of course, because Bobby was a stocky. He says, I want you to take him through the knee down. In other words, get the tackles in. That was Shankly's phrase. Get him sorted out. It's his first game, he'll be nervous, son. Hit him hard. Well, I couldn't get near Lennox. He was too elusive for me, you know. And we were a goal up, and I'll never forget this. And, I'm digressing here, but right in front of the jungle, the ball was in a puddle, and I was going to take the throw in, and I'm walking to the puddle to pick it up, and this guy, hey, you're useless, because I had a Rangers connection. You can imagine the jungle was giving me, hey, you're useless, you're hopeless anyway, this is the worst game I've ever seen. Now, I never ever spoke to a spectator. But I thought, this guy's giving me a hard time. We were 1-up at the time. And I was picking the ball up and I just lifted my head. And I said to him, you're the mug, pal. You paid to get in. Said, you'll be fucking paid next season. He was nearly a prophet, the guy. But you can't beat the crowd. I learned not to ever to talk back to the crowd. But that was, Shankly was, he had a wonderful turn of phrase. Mm-hmm. And, well, that was him. Take him from the knee down.
Yeah.
And then he would say, can you count? Brown would say to me, Christ, Craig, can you count? I say, yeah. He says, what's one for leaving? I say, 10. Get them to 10 as quick as possible. See, there were no subs. Yeah. But I couldn't get near Lennox. But I played well, that apart. And so I don't think I was ever going to be Billy Bremner or Jim Baxter or my hero. My hero at school was a Hearts player. And my dad, when Hearts came to the west of Scotland, he took me to see this one player, not to see Hearts. If you want to be a player, you've got to watch this guy. And I always say to people, you know, Dave McPike.
Yeah.
And he went from Hearts down to play for
Derby.
Derby, that's right. And Nottingham and Derby.
Yeah.
And wonderful. Davy McPike. Tottenham.
Mm-hmm. Tottenham, yeah.
So, I think he went to Tottenham first, but what a wonderful player he was. And I just, my father used to take me and he said, we're not going to see Hearts, we're going to see McPike. Watch everything he does, and that's, if you watch that, you'll learn. And he was my hero as a youngster.
Brilliant. You obviously, after your playing career, you went into teaching before you went into coaching. What was it? Was it always kind of the plan to do that if football didn't work out?
Aye, well, no, the teaching was first. You know,
right, okay.
Football came. My parents were quite strict about getting educational qualifications. Yeah. So I thought I went to be a PE teacher,
right?
Because I thought it would match the football career, you know. And so I went to Jordan Hill, and I was a PE teacher. I trained. Now, I was actually at the college when I was at Rangers. And when I went to Dundee, I was still a student. But then, you know, when I got to Dundee, I got qualified. But I went full-time football and part-time teaching. We trained every morning. And I taught every afternoon in Dundee. The other boys were there on the bookies. And there were 5 of us in digs, you know, we're all in the digs together, quite a group of the players, including a big boy from Ayrshire, Ian Muir. He was in the digs. Ian was from Ayr Academy. So we had a very great social life up there. And, you know, we played snooker. We went out once a week to the cafe. And after the game on a Saturday, we would go to one of the local dance halls. There are 3 dance halls at that time in the day. So the social life was terrific. And we had a great. Then I was teaching in the afternoon, and then I went to visit the director of education, and he came to me and says, "Why are you teaching in the afternoon?" And I said, "Why?" I said, "Well, the other boys they're losing money in the bookies, or they're playing snooker." I said, and he says, "Why?" He says, "I've looked at your qualifications." And you know, he was quite hurtful rather. He said, "Do you know what they call the PE teacher in the school?" And I said, "No, the ignorant acrobat." "Do you want to be an ignorant acrobat all your life?" And I said, "No, not really." He says, "Well, why don't you spend the afternoons studying and get a degree rather than a diploma?" I had a diploma in physical education. And he said, "You should get a degree." And he said, "If you want to do it, we'll support you as long as you teach for us for 3 years when you get it." And Dundee. So I said, "Okay." So I didn't realise at the time, but that was at the time when the Open University just had started.
Right, okay.
So I went to the Open University, and instead of, I continued to teach, but I did my studying at night and in the morning. I was up at 7 in the morning to do an hour and a half, 2 hours before I went to the training. So that's why and then when I get transferred to Falkirk, I went back to live in Hamilton.
Yeah.
And I get married then, and I went back to live in Hamilton. And I looked for a job teaching, and I taught for a while in the secondary school because I had my subjects were English and geography. Then I got a call from the Director of Education in Lanarkshire, who was at school with me, and he said to me, "I'll give you a tip." I said, "What's that?" He said, "If you want to progress in education, go into the primary." And I said, "I've not got a handbag. I'm not going to." I thought it was for females only. You know?
Yeah.
He said, "No." He said, "With your qualifications," because when I did the PE qualification, I added on a 1 year for primary. So that enabled me to be a primary teacher as well. So I took his advice, and very quickly I was deputy head and then head of a primary, which, because of the qualifications I had. And then as a result of that, I got a job lecturing in education at Craigie College in Ayr.
Right, okay.
So, I had a secondary qualification, I had a primary qualification, and therefore I was a good candidate for the job, I think, in the College of Education, which was a great job I had at Ayr. And I'm still playing for Falkirk. And then they get rid of me, they freed me. I was limping along right enough in one leg. And that was me finishing. I was very fortunate that I was doing the coaching courses at Largs when I was a player. And one of my colleagues in the course was the manager of Motherwell. And it was Willie McLean.
Right, okay.
And he eventually came to Ayr, but he offered me the job assistant manager at Motherwell, which was very good. So I managed to do that. So that started me off.
And one of Ian St John got the Motherwell job as well, didn't he? After that, was that?
No, Ian St John left, and Willie got the job.
Right, okay. But
and I'll give you an exclusive. Seriously, about Ian St John.
Right.
Ian St John was the Motherwell manager, and of course I stayed in Hamilton, and I watched Motherwell and Hamilton play. He was a great player for Motherwell, Ian St John. He was the manager, and he left Motherwell to go to Portsmouth.
Right.
Manager, and Willie got the job.
Okay.
And when Willie got the job, he asked me to go as his assistant. Now I was quite flat. I was surprised, but he said, "You can do it. You're working in the college at Ayr. You can do. The college doesn't start till October. No, so July, August, September, the students aren't there. So you could be full time in the pre-season training, and then go part-time, and I'll do it myself." So I was a part-time assistant manager of Motherwell, and they were a full-time team. They were a very good team at the time.
Yeah.
Willie was an outstanding manager. Willie McLean was very good. Now that was before he came down to Ayr. He was the Motherwell manager, and I was his assistant. So that's how I got and it was because I met Willie at Largs on the coaching course, and I knew his brother Jim, and I didn't know Tommy at the time. I eventually got to know Tom.
Yeah. So
that's what happened. And therefore, when I was released by Falkirk, freed me because I did all right for them. When I went to Falkirk, they were bottom of the league, and they made two signings. Doug Bailey, who was a journalist for the Sunday Post, Bailey and I went in there, and we got them into the middle of the league. Oh well, it coincided with our arrival, and they were happy with us. But again, my knee was killing me by then. Another operation, and they freed me. They got rid of me. So I only had, in all, 9 years as a player.
Yeah.
Senior player.
And then obviously you do really well at Motherwell as assistant manager. And when did you first hear about the Clyde job?
Well, Billy McNeil, as I said to you earlier, Billy was a pal of mine because we played in the same under-18 team for Scotland.
Yeah.
I knew Billy well, and Billy was the Clyde manager.
Right.
And Billy got the Aberdeen job. So he recommended me.
Right, okay.
And I was assistant manager of Motherwell, and he recommended me to Clyde. So I was asked to go and meet the Clyde chairman, which I did, and they offered me the job. So I left. It was a more suitable job because Clyde were a part-time team. Motherwell were full time, and Motherwell were doing well. You know, they were in the Texaco Cup, which meant they were away doing playing teams in England. You know, teams like Tottenham were in that cup. You know, it was a big tournament. Motherwell weren't in Europe at the time, but they were in. So I couldn't get off my work to go to the midweek European games. So Clyde was a very lucky and a good move for me.
And what was it like? And obviously, your memories of that will be winning the second division title. Just how good was it? How good a first job was that for you in management?
Well, I had great experience as an assistant manager.
Yeah.
Because Willie McLean, the McLean family, I think, is the most knowledgeable footballing family in Scotland.
Definitely. Yeah.
I mean, they're brilliant in terms of football knowledge. And Willie was the oldest. So Willie was maybe they both Jim and Tommy would phone Willie for advice, and I would hear Jim phone Willie. And Jim got the big reputation because of the United success, but he learned a lot from Willie. Lunchtime, we'd been in the office at Fir Park. Oh, it's our Jim. And he would talk to him about who you're playing Hearts and so. Yeah. How did you play against them? What do you think we should do? Jim would be asking Willie. Yeah. And Willie would say, he'd hand me the phone. He'd say, tell him what we did in training this morning, Craig. Honestly. And I said, have you got a pen there, Jim? And I said, draw a half pitch. And I would talk him through what Willie did or what we did there. And therefore, Jim, I think he was a wonderful manager, Jim. And terrific recruitment. He great eye for a player. Yeah. And therefore, he did exceptionally well. But Willie was a brilliant manager too, I thought. Yeah. And I'm sure Jim learned a lot from Willie. So that's not the question you asked me.
What was when you went to Clyde, what was your experience like, and how good was your first job in management?
Billy McNeil had been, right? And Billy had left a very good squad. Only 16 players. No reserve team or anything like that. And they were there was a different structure then. They were in the second division. And so I went in, and he had left a good nucleus of players. And we were top of the league at Christmas. And the chairman said to me, you've got to sell a player. We never go into debt at Clyde. Yeah. And I said, we're top of the league, Mr. Chairman. He says, no. And he said, that doesn't matter. We never go into the red. So he says, they'll need to phone round, get rid of a player. I said, there's only two you want money for. Who? And I said, Joe Ward or Steve Archibald. Right. He said, aye, try and get rid of them. So I phoned every Premier League manager. See, I knew them all because I'd been at Motherwell for 4 years as the assistant. So I phoned them round, and one that was the Ayr United manager. You'll not believe this. He says to me, I'll take Archibald. How much you want? And I says, we want 25,000. And he says, we can't afford that here. He said, but I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll give you Jim McSherry and 15,000. We value McSherry at 10,000. So I said, I like McSherry as a player. I said, I'll do that deal. I phoned the chairman. I said, we're getting a player and 15,000, Mr. Chairman. Oh, well, that'll keep us in the black to the end of the season. Yeah. Well, Archibald went, and although what happened was McSherry wouldn't come to Clyde. Right. I had to phone him. I said, I've arranged a deal for you to come. He said, I'm not McSherry, Jim, a lovely wee guy. He said, I'm not playing football on a dog track. It was Sheffield Stadium. And he says, I'm not playing on a dog track. I said, come on, we'll get a deal. No, he wouldn't come. So that scuppered the deal. So I couldn't get rid of either Ward or Archibald for a few weeks. And then the chairman kept on at me, we need to sell a player. So I phoned Billy McNeil back. I said, Billy, you know him. You were the Clyde manager. You know Archibald. And he was a midfield player at that time. And Billy says, how much you? I said, 25,000. He said, aye, okay, we'll give you him. We'll give you it. So Billy signed him for Aberdeen. And we were top of the league. But we still managed to hang on and win the league. But then we were into a higher echelon. And it was a full-time. The other clubs were full-time. And we were really struggling. And we'd lost one of our, he was a midfield player for Clyde, Archibald, very good. and we lost him, and we lost Joe Ward. We transferred him as well to Aston Villa.
Right.
So rid of our two best players, and down. Then the next season we in the league above we went down, and to the board's credit, they kept faith with us, and we restructured. Got one or two new players, one or two from here. We got Robert Riley from here, and we got Billy McCall from here. I knew Ayr United because I lived down here.
Yeah.
I get my eyes on them, and I signed Joe Philippi from Celtic, who was an Ayr player, and we won the league at the highest number of points ever. Riley tells me the next season. So we had a good Newcastle at Clyde, and you're asking for good players. That Riley was a good player, but the best player I had at Clyde was the most sought after player was Nevin, Pat Nevin.
Yeah.
And he went to Chelsea for 95,000 on a tribunal. But the best signing I made was Jerry McCabe.
Right. Okay.
I sold him for 60,000. Sold Ian Ferguson. Young Ian Ferguson sold him to St Mirren for 60,000, and he went to Rangers for $1 million.
Yeah.
One night in a row. So, and he was at Aberdeen as a young boy. Alec Ferguson let him go. I always wind up Alec. I always say, hey, I said, and if I'm having to let a young player go as a manager, as I did, and it's a heartbreak when you've got a young player and you say to him, son, I'm sorry, I don't think you're going to make it. It's a value judgment I'm making. Yeah. For your sake, I'm wrong. And I always give the Alec Ferguson story. I always say, look, Alec Ferguson phoned me and he said, I'm letting go one or two boys. There's one down your area from Cambusline, Rutherford. He might do you at Clyde, but he'll not do me at Aberdeen. And I signed Ian Ferguson. I sold him for $1 million. I sold him, beg your pardon, St Mirren sold him to Rangers for $1 million. And I sold him for 60,000. Now, this was a guy that the best manager on the planet, by a mile, Alec Ferguson, said, he'll not do. So I always say to parents, I'm letting your boy go. But I'll tell you a story about Alec Ferguson, because he let Ian Ferguson go. Yeah. No relation, of course, but he let Ferguson go, and Ferguson turned out an international player and a £1 million player. Nobody's perfect, not even, and I'll always say Alec Ferguson, his record, 38 trophies. Yeah. And 13 championships in England. And what was it about Alec Ferguson that what did you think when, obviously you knew him when he was young, what did you think about him that he would go on and do? Like, what stood out when he was at that age? What I knew about him was determination. He was determined, and he was a battler. I played against him, obviously. Played with him in the Scotland under-18 team. And that's why I became friendly with him. Yeah. But I played against him. I remember one game he was playing for Dunfermline, I was playing for Falkirk, and I was booting him. I had one attribute, and that was, how can I put it? Alec said, I would say a hard tackler, but he said a dirty. He says, you're the dirtiest. I used to get the tackles in. And Alec respected that. I know that, I had a few kicks at him and battered him and what have you. And he respected you if you stood up to him, both physically and if you stood up to him, in conversation as well. Because everybody agrees with him. Yeah. No, I didn't always agree. I said, no, that's rubbish. But I would never take him on in a quiz. You're wonderful. Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah. Do you think it was? Was that his game? That was his game. That was his game. And see, obviously, in that experience, was it the shipyards? It was. Do you think that kind of enabled him to be as like shop steward? Yeah. Do you think that enabled him to be what he became? I think so. That was he was a staunch socialist, and he was a hard man, and he wouldn't mess him about. And he was determined, but he had a great football knowledge and strong beliefs, strong discipline. People say to me, what is the secret of Alec Ferguson's success? And I never heard the hairdryer. I worked with him with the Scottish team. I suppose we'll come to that later, but I was 10 games with him because he had 10 games manager of Scotland.
Yeah.
When Jockstein died, he got the job temporarily. Well, he never raised his voice once. And we were in the World Cup in Mexico.
Yeah.
But he spoke the way I'm speaking to you, conversationally. But I'll tell you what, every player listened. You could see the faces. When you're in the staff, the players are there. They're down there. The staff are at a table, sitting beside the manager, and you're watching. You're not sitting in the audience. You're watching and you could see the players' faces. And if anybody's eyes rolled or didn't pay attention, Alec would just put the eye on them. But you could see them. They all sat. And a very interesting thing about Alec Ferguson, he liked to do a team meeting in good weather outside.
Right.
And he would sit in the grass, lads. And he would sit in the grass and he'd take them out of the grass and he would shoot it. And they would all be sitting there in the sunshine. But they made sure there was nothing behind that they could be distracted. There wasn't a game of football behind or a golf or anything like that. They were looking into a tree and he would be sitting there talking to them. And, inspirational stuff, knowledgeable.
Brilliant.
But they all listened.
Brilliant. When did you first hear about the Scotland connection? When was it Ernie Walker that spoke to you first? Yeah, well, it was Alec Ferguson phoned me. I was at Craigie College. Right, okay. With a class. And when the class finished, the secretary came from the office. She says, Mr. Ferguson phoning you. Could you phone him back? And I said, phone him back. At lunch, she said, you had a class. I would get you to phone at lunchtime. I said, I'm saying to myself, this is McCoist winding me up. Saying it's Mr. Ferguson. And when she gave me the number, it was Aberdeen number. Right, okay. Said, it might be, I'll wait to hear this conversation. So I went into the office at Craigie College and I phoned the Aberdeen number. And the secretary answers, Mr. Ferguson, please. It's Craig Brown. Oh, yes, he's expecting you. And I thought, it is Alec Ferguson. So come on, wait to hear this conversation. Brown. I said, hello, Alec. How would you like the holiday of a lifetime? I said, where are we going? He says, Mexico. He says, I have to take the Scottish team. Jock sadly died. Yeah. And they've asked me to take the team and I'm trying to get my staff put together. So I'd like you to join the staff. I said, oh, but I can't do that. I've got a job. It's in June and I'm working at the college. But students are about finished about June, are they not? I said, well, I said, ask for a month's unpaid leave of absence and we'll pay you. I said, well, I'll do that. I'm so tempted. It sounds great. Now, I'm only the Clyde manager. Yeah. I'm not managing a big team. I'm the Clyde manager. And he said, listen, he said, ask for the unpaid. He said, there's one wee thing. He says, we've got 3 games to play, but we won't let that interfere with our enjoyment. He said, I think the results proved to be right, but no, he said, and I said, who's all going? He said, I'm taking it's an old pals act for football. I'm taking the pals. I'm taking Walter Smith, Archie Knox, and you, if you'll come, Broom. So that's the staff. And we've to go to altitude training in New Mexico for 10 days before we go to Mexico for the World Cup. And of course, they had still a playoff with, no, they won the playoff by that time. Yeah, it was against Australia. Australia, aye. So that was my introduction, was a phone call from, that took me into the SFA. Now, Alec was offered the Scotland job after the World Cup in Mexico, but he decided to stay with Aberdeen. Right. And while he was in Mexico, this is another exclusive, Tottenham needed a manager and Arsenal needed a manager. Yeah. And both phoned him. And he said, I'll tell you after the World Cup. Well, they didn't want to wait. They were frightened to wait and be let down. I think a director of Arsenal met a director of Tottenham. And neither, so he came back to Aberdeen after the World Cup. And then Manchester United weren't doing well. Yeah. To October, I think September, they were not doing well at all. And Gordon Strachan apparently recommended him to the chairman at Manchester United. And that's how he ended up there. Now, he could easily have been at Tottenham or at Arsenal, but he went back to Aberdeen. So
Then, obviously, when he didn't take the Scotland job, we came back from Mexico. Andy Roxburgh got the job.
Yeah.
And Ernie Walker had been in Mexico and he'd watched the training, and I had been taking some of the training, and it was very enjoyable, I've got to say. So Ernie and Andy, between them, decided that they would give me the assistant's job, offer me it. And I said, no, I don't want the assistant's job because I've always had a team.
Yeah.
I like my own team. Well, Ernie said to me, we'll give you the under-21 team, sole charge of that. Oh, I said, that's great. So I really was, they did everything the cheap, the SFA then, because I was manager of the under-21s. I was assistant manager of the national team.
Yeah.
Now, in those days, the fixtures matched. The under-21 team played on a Tuesday night and the national team played on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
So say you were playing Portugal, you would fly to Portugal on the Monday. The under-21s would play on the Tuesday night. The same plane. They would wait. They would watch the first team and then fly back together on a charter flight. So it was perfect. You couldn't do that now because the fixtures are separate. They don't match each other. So it suited. I had a brilliant job. I was manager of the under-21s and I was the assistant with the national team.
And also as well, you took the under-16s to the final with the 1989 World Championships, losing to Saudi Arabia. Just what was that experience like?
That was good, Scott. Thank you. I was asked to do, with the under-21 team, I was asked to take the under-20 team,
right,
and the under-16 team as well. When they got to tournaments. Now, before the under-16 team got to the final of the World Cup in Scotland, I was in the quarter-final of the under-20 World Cup in Chile.
Yeah,
we took a great youth team for Scotland to Chile, and they played really, really well over there. A fantastic tournament, the World Under-20 Championship. And Scotland, we were beaten by West Germany after extra time and penalties. And Bertie Boltz was the manager of the West Germany team. Well, that was it. We got to the quarter. We won our group, and we got to the quarter-final in Chile. So that was 2 years before the under-16 team. So I had that team in Chile, then I had the under-16 team here, and great assistants from with the youth team were from Ross Matty, who was another Ayrshire man, Killie striker. Yeah, Ross Matty, and Ross, fantastic coach with the young boys, and I was lucky Ross was there. And the World Championship in Scotland, it took off because the Scottish under-16s were doing really well. And again, we won the group, and we got to the quarter-final, which was at Aberdeen, and we beat East Germany up there. And then the semi-final was at Tynecastle, which was a shutout. People couldn't get in. It was so popular, and we beat Portugal. Figo and company, and Portugal team, with Carlos Queiroz, the manager, who was assistant to Alec at Manchester United. Yeah. And then we got Saudi Arabia in the final at Hampden. Now, we had 27,000 at Tynecastle, and the gates were shut. We had 52,000 at Hampden. So, I mean, it was, you couldn't get a ticket for Hampden for the final of the World Championship. And we were the most unlucky team. I say it myself. Both these tournaments, the under-21 in Chile, were lost in penalties, and we lost this one in the final, the under-16 tournament in penalties. We got a penalty 12 minutes before the end of the normal time, and Brian O'Neill's penalty was missed. Yeah. So we went into extra time, and again, we got a penalty during play. No, but it's the other way around, big man. During play, he missed it. And then the penalty shootout, he missed one as well. 2 penalties Brian missed in the World Cup final. I keep winding him up. but he's a lovely guy and they're good players. But so we lost in penalties. So that was a good experience. And, one of my favourite experiences being in a World Cup final.
Brilliant. You qualify for Italia 90, the main team qualified for Italia 90. What was your memories of qualifying and the memories of that tournament?
Italia 90, I'm trying to think. I'm confused between the Euro 96 and Italia 90.
Right.
But I'll group the two together quickly. I'll tell you that in both qualification campaigns for Euro 96, we played 10 games.
Mm-hmm.
And in 10 games, we lost 3 goals.
Mm-hmm.
We feel proud of that.
Yeah.
And to qualify for the World Cup in France, again, we played 10 qualifying games. And again, we lost 3 goals.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's quite remarkable to lose only 6 goals in 20 qualifying games.
Yeah.
And I people say, you were that defensive, and I deny that, because I say, look, I never ever put a Scottish team out without 2 strikers.
Yeah.
This new fashion, it's fashionable now to put one up only.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we never played with one up. I always had 2 strikers, and the house style we were using was 3-5-2.
Mm-hmm.
And I copied that from Germany, because the most successful team in Europe at club level and at international level was Germany in those days. And they played 3-5-2. And we had to play them in the semi-final with the under 21 tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Quarter-final, under 21. We played them, and I matched them up 3-5-2, and I was 3-5-2 in my head.
Yeah.
After that, all the time. Mm-hmm. Except when you played Holland, for example, because they put 3 up. Well, you can't play 3 against 3. Well, you're daft if you do that, I think. So we had to play a back 4 when we played Holland. But that was the house style we used, 3-5-2. And I've got to say that the qualification in both tournaments for the World Cup and for the European Euro 96 and the World Cup 98, it was a 3-5-2, and we lost very few goals. And we had 2 good strikers. Yeah. McCoist and Johnson was one, McCoist and Gallagher. Mm-hmm. We could dodge it. We had good
strikers. Yeah. And see, when Andy Roxburgh resigns, did you think you would get the Scotland job? Were you surprised when you got it?
Yeah, very surprised. I didn't think I'd get the job, because the big names were getting mentioned. The papers were given. Souness was mentioned. Right. Strachan was mentioned. Willie Miller, McLeish now. But I had done well with the youths. Mm-hmm. And with the under 21s. So it was a wee bit of a surprise. It was a surprise to me, but it wasn't a total shock, because I was in the system. Mm-hmm. And they talk about, succession planning. Yeah. They talk about in clubs, like Liverpool. They promoted the assistant, that was their way of doing it. Yeah. I think that's a good way of doing it.
Definitely.
You got continuity. Mm-hmm. But with the SFA, I was, quite successful with the younger teams, mm-hmm. Under 21 team. We were in the semi-final in European Championship.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So in a quarter-final under 20 in the world, and there's 205 or something countries in the world then, mm-hmm. But even in Europe, to be in the semi-final of the European Championship, there are now 55 countries in Europe. At that time, I think there were only 38 or thereabouts, but still to be in the top 2 mm-hmm. was good, very good. And the same with under 20 World Cup. So, but and I wasn't in any way. I was surprised, but I wasn't in any way overawed, because mm-hmm. I knew the boys. Many of them were in the under 21 team. Mm-hmm. And therefore I knew them, and they knew me. And because the under 21 team was relatively successful, they respected that, mm-hmm. and therefore I had no bother. I wouldn't have liked to walk into the international dressing room from Clyde FC mm-hmm. to take the Sounnesses and the Strachans and the big shots, and Willie Miller, Alec McLeish. But it was no problem having had them in the under 21 team, mm-hmm. a lot of them in it, and having been the assistant. It was a good transition. It was relatively straightforward.
And then, obviously, Euro 96 is your first tournament. See, because that tournament was in England, was there more pressure on you to get there?
Massive pressure, because you mentioned Andy Walker there.
Yeah.
He says to me, you know where the tournament is that we're competing for this? I said, yeah. He said, if we don't get there and it's next door, you're sacked. Why? You're finished. You were really warned nicely, but firmly. And I knew we had to get there. The very same with the World Cup in France. You can imagine the two tournaments I was lucky enough to qualify for were next door. Yeah. Now, if they hadn't been next door, it wouldn't have been so bad. You know, if the World Cup was in Mexico again or Brazil or somewhere, it wouldn't have been so bad at all. But because they're next door and the Tartan Army's champing at the bit to get there, you've got to qualify. I was told anyway. And it was a fair, challenge, I can tell you. But we battled away quite well, and we had a very, very good group of players. Yeah. Now, when I look now at the group of players Steve Clarke's got, I've got to say, I think, you know, if Steve's put his best team out and we put our best team out, I think we would have better players. Yeah. And usually in a game of football, the better players win. The best players win the game. And I think, you know, and I was really, really lucky because I had midfield provision, which was fantastic. And the back three were unbelievable. Calderwood, Henry and Boyd. And the two best goalkeepers in the business at the time, Leighton and Gorham. I mean, you just... and then, of course, we had strikers that would score a goal. Because we had McCoy and Johnson at the beginning. And then I took McCoy to Euro 96 and then I condemned myself. Do you still regret that decision? Yeah. Not taking him to the World Cup, of course I do. I regret it. He hadn't played a lot that season. He got to command it, and he had an injury. And I thought, if I take Ali McCoy, it's an old pals act. And I didn't want to put him in that position, and I didn't want to put myself in it either. That you know, one or two of the journalists are quite scurrilous, and they would have had a real go. They say, why is he taking McCoy? He's only played, I think, 11 games. He's hardly scored a goal. But I left McCoy and Stuart McCall, two really good guys and very good players, out of the World Cup squad for France. 2 years after they had both played very well. In Europe. Now, that's my admission and my regret that I didn't take these guys, particularly McCoy. Even if McCoy's not playing, he can still come off the bench. And he's in the group. He's in the dressing room. You know, exactly. He's great value, wherever he is. And I always got on well with him. And, I mean, that was a good one when we played one of the qualification games, and after the game, he was another one. He says to John Collins, it was a wee bit similar to my previous story at Rangers. He says to Collins, "Hi John, that's no bad today. You know, we're in Latvia or somewhere." He says, "Big crowd for Latvia. I know that was 18,000. And that's what wee John says, "Now, how do you know?" He says, "I was counting them. And McCoy's waiting, you passing it to me." The same as that becomes the standard line. But McCoy's always had a quip. Great in the dressing room, humour in the camp. And of course, it used to give me stick, you know. Pick a team, you couldn't pick your nose. You know. but nicely, you know, there was no insubordination. There was respect, but it was good humour. Yeah. In 1998, obviously, you opened the tournament against Brazil. Just what was that memory like of that opening game? It must have been up there. I think that would be probably the most memorable time in my football career. When the hype for the opening game against the world champions. I mean, it wasn't just against any team. They were the world champions, Brazil. And the hype was unbelievable. And the ticket scramble was the same. You just couldn't get a ticket for it. And prior to that, when we were going to France, I'll give you a quick McCoy story. I don't want your programme to be. we had to play. We were asked to play France in a friendly.
Right.
And France hadn't to qualify. They're the host country.
Yeah.
So they've got to qualify. So they're looking for an easy friendly. So they phoned Scotland. and Jim Farry, Jim Farry says to me, would you like to play France? I said, they're a good team. He says, but that's good. I said, well, I'll tell you what, if they'll play us in one of the venues that they're using for the World Cup, we'll play them. He says, that's a good idea. So if they'll play us, now we had the draw for the World Cup put us to the host country, the world champions, Paris. They put us to Bordeaux to play in Norway, and they put us to St Etienne.
Yeah, Morocco.
So he says, if they'll play us in one of them, I said, right. So we got a game in St Etienne against France, friendly. So now I didn't know at that time they were going to win the World Cup.
Yeah.
I knew they were a good team. They hadn't to qualify, so we didn't know their form too much. But when you looked at their players, so I looked at their team, and we're playing them, and I thought, so I'm doing the team meeting. I remember this, and I said, I'll tell you what, guys. And there's a guy from Ayrshire, of course. I said, Burley, your job is number 10. If number 10 of France crosses that halfway line in possession of the ball and you don't whack him, you'll be sitting on the bench. You'll be getting hooked. And he's like that. I said, his name is Zidane. Do you understand? Right? And Burley, because I knew their players, but I didn't. So Burley nodded the head, right? Well, McCoy's a substitute in that game at St Etienne. And 5 minutes play, right in front of the bench, Zidane gets the ball, and in comes Burley. Whack! I mean, it wasn't just a tackle, it was an assault. Oh, and he went up there, you could hear him squealing, and down he went. And I thought, oh no, we're going to lose a player. Well, the wee referee was, I think, Spanish, but he had good English. And he's calling Burley over. He's saying to Burley, number 8, come here. Number 8. And Burley's standing like that. He says, you were a bit late. Burley's that polite for coming up, I got as early as I could. he says, your name? He says, Craig Burley. And the wee referee's writing it down, and I says, well, wait a minute. And to our amazement, he put up a yellow card.
Right.
And McCoy sees this, and McCoy shouts on, Burley, hey, Burley. And Burley looks over, he said, one more tackle like that, pal, you'll be joining your teeth in the dressing room. Well, so that was the first laugh. We were 1 down at half time. We were doing quite well. This is against the future world champions. Yeah. The second half starts, and I say to McCoy, get warmed up, Coisty. And he's like that. And, only McCoy could get away with this. No other player, anybody else, it would be cheek. When I said get warmed up, he says, no, a 4th time. So he's warming up. And while he's warming up, Gordon Jury scored the best goal I've seen Scotland score.
Right.
And I'm taking Jury off. You see, so Jury, he hits it. It was a brilliant move. And right in the top of the postage stamp, the net. So I says, Coisty, we'll leave it just now. He looked, just on the seat, we'll leave it just now. And he's shaking his head. He says, Jury, he says, 1 goal in 6 years. He says, prolific, he says. But McCoy can say that with a smile.
Yeah.
Don't take offense. So he sat down. Anyway, we put him on shortly, a wee while later. But when a guy has scored, I always feel, when he scored, the next time he shoots, the goal's twice his size. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't going to take a guy off that's just scored.
Yeah.
Because he's in a high. It's same as if you've scored with a penalty. The next penalty, the goal's bigger. You feel you can't miss it. Anyway, but McCoy has that bit of humour about him, and no acrimony. He had me in his chat show. He had a show, McCoy.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Well, he asked me to come on. I said, I'm not coming on. He says, why not? I said, you're taking the mickey. No. I'll make you a star, he says. I said, so he will. But anyway, there were 3 guests. I'm digressing here a wee bit. Stop me if I'm going to. The 3 guests were Leslie Grantham. I didn't know him, but he was EastEnders.
Dirty Den.
And I says, who's the other one? And he says, Kylie Minogue. And he says, you behave yourself. She's for me. I said, well, that's okay. He says, well, Kylie's a star. We'll do Leslie Grantham first, then you, then Kylie. And you get 15 minutes each, right? And it's filmed in the Pavilion Theatre. And we call you out the audience and you come up. So he interviews big Leslie Grantham, who's a nurse. What team did he support? He was very good. West Ham.
Right.
And he was good. Then he talks about me. He says, now, my next guest is my manager, my friend. And he gave me a big build-up. And he says, can we welcome Mr. Craig Brown? I have to walk down and up on the stage. So I go up on the stage and he's standing to shake my hand like that, and I put my foot up on the stage and he says, no. You keep me sitting on the bench long enough. Just get back to my seat. He threw me back to my seat. Well, of course, and he brought out Kylie, right? Now, Kylie Minogue came out and it was all smiley stuff. Well, I had to get 15 minutes. She had to get 15 minutes. Well, she get 22 minutes. And I got the last 7 minutes, But that's my question. You could never be annoyed.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So that was the preparation was a game. One of the preparatory games was in St Etienne, and we lost 2-1 to the eventual world champions.
Yeah. And
we're quite a good team here, and we went to America. Once we qualified out the group, we went to America for preparatory games again. We played well, and so we were reasonably confident coming over to the World Cup. But the ticket scramble was incredible for the first game against Brazil. You couldn't get a ticket, and it was when the Prime Minister flies into Tony Blair to visit the team. I'm trying to think who was the Scottish First Minister.
Was it Henry? Was it Donald Dewar?
Donald Dewar. He came to see us training it before we left, to wish us all the best. I think it was Donald Dewar. He came anyway, either 96 or 98 came, Donald Dewar. But that when you realise when the First Minister's coming and the Prime Minister flies in to Paris to come and the security to come to the hotel to meet the players. And to be fair to Tony Blair, he knew every player. And he said he was a Newcastle fan, and Kevin Gallagher was playing for Newcastle at that time, and so they had a good conversation. But sorry, Scott, I got carried away.
See that campaign. Obviously, they were a really good performance against Brazil, and just obviously it was a sore goal to lose. The Norway game, obviously, Craig Burley gets sent off. Did you feel hard done by that he didn't win that game?
It was the last game. That was the last one he got sent off. That was Morocco.
Oh, Morocco, yeah, sorry.
We drew the game. Burley scored.
That's right, sorry. Yeah.
I'm calling him Burley. It's not fair, but that's what they call him. They don't call him Craig. They call him Burley. Right? The players. Craig Burley scored a good goal.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I used to always say the best pass in the game is between the opposing left back and the left centre back, because most centre backs usually they've got a 4-4-2 and the two centre halves are right footed. It's not all that common to have a left footed centre back. Terry Butcher was one, he was an exception. So if the centre back on the left side is right footed, he's weak in the left side, and every left back's left footed usually, so he's weak in the inside. So if you put a ball in between these two, they're defending with a wrong leg, their weaker leg. So the most intelligent player, obviously, in the group, dare I say it, not just because he got a degree in America, was David Weir. Big Davey's a clever boy.
Yeah.
And the team talk, I'm saying now, and in training and in practice, we'll try and make the final pass. McAllister was good at it. Collins was good. Putting the final pass in between the left back and the left centre back. And of course, Davy Weir clocked it. And the pass he put through there was brilliant. Yeah. And Burley ran in that space. And I can't remember, I think Bornaby and Henning Berg, they were defending with the wrong leg.
Yeah.
And he went through and lobbed the goalie, which the credit I give for that goal is to David Weir because of the intelligent pass he gave. And Burley finished it very, very well. So we drew that game. And then the last game was Morocco.
What did you think? What did you think of Morocco though before that game? Were you confident you could get a result, or did you know they were a good team? Were you worried?
I went to Casablanca to see them.
Right.
I went, months before when the draw was made. I went over there to watch them, and you see there's 36 million in Morocco population, and they were the African champions.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, they weren't a mug team, they weren't a pub team. And I went over there in the height, and when I saw them, I said, we have a game in hand here. Now, the press didn't think that. They didn't really know. I mean, when you say Morocco, you don't think of Morocco as a football country.
Yeah.
You think, it's hot over there. But if it had been Nigeria, maybe, or Ghana even, or South Africa, there would have been more respect. Morocco were better than them. And there's some very, very good players.
Yeah, Basia was the one that always stuck out to me.
That's right. So we had to play them. And, their other results were very good as well in the tournament. And a lot of nonsense was spoken about that game. The word that annoyed me was that one or two journalists, humiliation. We lost 3-0. But humiliation. Now, if you look at the stats, honestly, you can get the FIFA official stats. I've got them. We've got more possession. We've got more goal attempts. We've got more corner kicks. We've got more of everything. We've got more ordering off because Craig Burley got ordered all. We've won sent off. And we were losing 1-0 and Burley got sent off. And we had to try and do something. I can't remember the change I made, but I think Jackie McNamara won. To go at them. And of course, we exposed ourselves at the back. And Jim Leighton had 91 caps for Scotland, and he lost. He had 45 clean sheets. That's incredible. Yeah, 91 cap. Now, Jim's only mistake that I can ever recall him making, maybe was a mistake. The second goal. Yeah, he kind of palmed it and it dropped over his. Now. So we lost. We were chasing the game. And we lost 2 goals late in the second half, and then it was humiliation. Now, if you watched the game, we were actually the better team, and I'm not just saying that to make an excuse, because the stats are not the stats that count are the goals, and they scored the 2 good goals and a soft goal. So we lost that, unfortunately, and that was also eliminated. But I've got to say something to you, Scott, about the World Cup. I've been at 3 World Cups with Scotland. Yeah. Ferguson to Mexico. I went with Andy Roxburgh to Italy, and I had the team myself. So I got 3 World Cups, and in every World Cup, our best player called off injured. Now, people say, "Oh, who was that?" I said, "Well, when we were going to, Alec Ferguson took the team to Mexico. Kenny Dalglish got injured, couldn't go. When we were going to Italy in the World Cup, Andy's favourite player at the time was Davy Cooper of Rangers. Davy Cooper got injured, couldn't go. John Robertson of Hearts was scoring goals for fun, got injured, couldn't go. So these 2 were eliminated. And when I get the job and we're going to France in the World Cup, McAllister got injured. So we lost a top player, arguably the best player for each World Cup. Now, I'm convinced that if we went to Mexico with Alec Ferguson, if Ken Dalglish had been there, we would have. We drew that last game against Uruguay, nothing each. Kenny would have transformed that game for us. I'm sure, and I'm sure that if Gary McAllister had been able to play in France, we wouldn't have lost that last game that we did, and we could possibly have qualified. But that's the old excuses.
After that, obviously, I just want to touch on something a bit different. Obviously, your brother Jock was got the Celtic general manager job at the time. What was that? What was that like for you? Were you kind of pleased for Jock, or did you realise he was going into a kind of major job like that?
Well, it was a surprise for a start. I didn't for a minute think that, but I think some Celtic, either shareholder or director, new job in the legal world, and thought he would be, and I would have thought myself, he was tailor-made because his interest in football, it was commentary, it would have been an ideal job for him. And I think it was. I think he was happy. You know, he liked it at Celtic. And I can't remember what happened at the end. But he got on very well with Fergus McCann. Ian Fergus, but when Fergus left, I think, I'm trying to remember when he left shortly after that. I'm not sure.
I think Fergus left in '99, yeah.
I'm not sure Doc's exact timing there, but you know, and he really liked Tommy Burns. I think he was in the staff, or maybe, and he liked Ben Goss, the manager. I think there was a wee clash. I don't think it was so comfortable when it was who's the other?
Wim Jansen.
Wim Jansen. Don't think that was so comfortable. But you know, I was too busy to be honest. I couldn't be bothered. I wasn't caring what was happening at Celtic or at Rangers or any of the. It's a very. Not only was I Scotland manager, I was also technical director. Now, therefore, I was organising courses for coaches, for kids, and we had a community scheme. And luckily, we had a very good guy running this community scheme. But I was overall in charge now with things like legal cases. If a kid broke a leg in a course, you know, I was called upon it. And how much training did the coach have before he took this? You know, all this kind of stuff. It was when it was an international, it was a holiday time. Relaxation. I got away with the team. It was brilliant. The rest of the time, I was in every morning 9, and I didn't leave on a normal day till at least 5 or 6 at night. But usually there was a game I was going to at night. So, and I left my house in Ayrshire at early in the morning to be in at 9 because the staff are in at 9 now. If I was a manager only, I wouldn't have been needing to do that. I would have been able to, you know, take my time and go to a game in England. But I was the technical director and the manager, so it was a demanding shift.
Definitely. Euro 2000 as well. You get to the playoff against England and use one at the old Wembley. Just what's the memories of those two games? Well,
they're vivid in my memory because there was so much happening. And the first thing that the Scottish Football League were reluctant to cooperate the week before we played England at Hampden in the first leg. But I wanted them to postpone the fixtures, at least one fixture, and that was Celtic versus Rangers. Now, because that means half of your team is going to be happy and half's going to be sad. Or if it's a draw, you're banking on it being a draw. That's what I'm hoping for, a draw, so that there's no player with a head down. But in that game, George Albert accidentally, I've got to say, smashed
Lambert's teeth.
Lambert. Now, Lambert broke his jaw, I think, in that game. Now, Lambert would have been the player. Lambert his job was, he was a brilliant man marker. And that was his job in Germany. And that would have been his job for us. He'd have been marking Scholes in the middle of the park. Scholes scored 2 goals. And I'm saying, that would not have happened. You know, this is hypothetical. That would not have happened if Lambert was playing. So I asked, but I wasn't powerful enough, you know, as a manager, or I asked the league, would they postpone that game? Because we had quite a lot of players from both sides. Nowadays, there's hardly any. I was at a Celtic Rangers game recently. A game, I think Rangers won the game a few months ago. They won 2-0, and I looked at. I think Celtic had 2 players eligible for Scotland, and Rangers had 1 or something. Now, even when Rangers had their great result in Europe there recently, they had only 1 player.
Ryan Jack.
No, he wasn't fit. He wasn't playing.
Right. Okay.
In the away game, he wasn't playing. The only 1 player was the goalkeeper.
McGregor.
Who was
McLaughlin. Sorry.
but he has decided against playing for Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
He's retired from international football. So the best team in Scotland just now played a European tie away from home, and a wonderful performance and a great result. And Ryan Jack wasn't playing; he was injured, and not one of the players was eligible for Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I saw the Old Firm game, and I think Celtic had two, McGregor and starting the game, and the boy Welsh at the back,
mm-hmm.
because Christie was injured.
Mm-hmm.
Griffiths wasn't in the team, and Rangers again. I think they had two in that game. So if you look at an Old Firm game now, and you're trying to get a Scottish team,
mm-hmm.
you're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel sorry for Stevie Clarke in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
He deserves a better response from the Old Firm, because they're bringing so many foreign players in, and it holds back the young boys. For example, Aberdeen have got McCrory from Rangers,
mm-hmm.
and they've got him because the boy was frustrated he wasn't getting a game, and I think Stephen Gerrard, to be fair, Stephen Gerrard felt well, if he was the boy, he would want a game, so
mm-hmm.
let him go to Aberdeen.
Mm-hmm.
And he's full, they're full of foreign players.
And see, obviously the winning at Wembley, it was the last time he's played at the old Wembley. Was it just an amazing feeling? Obviously he didn't get through, but was it just an amazing feeling to win that game?
Yes, well, like you asked me about that game. I'm sorry. I thought the first leg we managed to. We didn't get the full team, I felt, because of the injury, but we were beaten. And the best bit of journalism you've ever heard was a guy who did me in very nicely. But I hated it. But wait to hear this. We were staying at Troon, in the Marine Troon, and the guy called Pete Barraclough from Skye. We lost 2-0 at home, and I think we're a bit unfortunate, to be fair. And I wasn't too downhearted. I'm saying we've been doing to Wembley here, and if we get our act together. Anyway, he came to interview me the day after the game, on the Sunday, and he arrives and he says, "Will you come outside and we'll do it outside at the golf course?" I says, "No, I'm not allowed to do that." "No, why not? Why not?" Or something different. I says, "No, I'm not going out." He said, "Oh, I'd like you to come outside." I said, "No." He said, "I've got to do it. There's an advertising board. The sponsors' names are behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And my instructions are, if you're doing any camera stuff, sit in front of that board and you'll see all this." He was quite miffed. So I did the interview in front of the sponsor board. And at night, I looked at and he started outside. This was brilliant journalism. He started. Now we've just been to the Scotland camp and we've interviewed one or two players and the manager, and then we'll just go over and we'll have a word with Craig Brown. So he's talking to me outside at the Marine Hotel, and he ends up by saying, "And Craig, I've got to warn you, if you don't win this game on Wednesday at Wembley, it will be the end of the road for Craig." And the camera went from his face down to the name of the street. The Marine Hotel's on Craig End Road. That's why he wanted me out. Craig End Road. And I thought, I'm saying to you, it was brilliant journalism, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It will be the end. And the camera's on me, and I see the camera boy going like that. And at night, I watched the Sky report, watched my own interview, and there I was making all the excuses. And the end of the road for Craig. But I knew we would go down to Wembley and we'll do our best. And I changed the team quite importantly. And a wee bit of a long story, but I'll try and abbreviate it. I looked at the England team, and their two centre halves were two warriors, Keown of Arsenal and Adams. Mm-hmm. And you wouldn't mess with them.
No.
So I think when they were successful beating us in Scotland, I think we'll play a ball, a footballer at centre half along with Adams. We'll play Southgate, and I thought Southgate's soft. He's not as hard as Keown's in it. So we'll put somebody aggressive against him, and we put up front with I think Billy Dodds was the one striker, and we put Don Hutchison up front. and Don Hutchison abused him about the whole game, which was good for us. But the story about that is quite an important one. And the man that gave me the idea to put him up front was Tommy Burns.
Right.
Tommy Burns, I asked him, he was a commandant manager, would you take the Scotland B team? And he took the B team to Wales. And we had a game the same night. I didn't see the game. And I said to him, anybody I should put in my first team? Tommy Burns said, yes, definitely. I said, who? He says, Don Hutchison. I said, no, he'll not get a game. I said, because we've got good midfield. That's our strongest point. We've got Collins, McAllister, we've got Lambert. He wouldn't get a game in our team. He says, I'm not talking about midfield, Craig. I said, what are you talking about? Tommy Burns said to me, I put him up front in the B team, and what a striker he turned out to be. So I said, well, thanks for that information. Now, so it was Tommy Burns telling me. Now, that wasn't the first time I'd put him up front. We played a friendly with Germany in Germany, and Tommy, we put him up front and we beat Germany 1-0. Who scored the goal? Don Hutchison. We beat England at Wembley 1-0. Who scored the goal? Don Hutchison. Who told me to put him there? Tommy Burns. No, seriously, I mean it. That, you know, you're never too proud to accept the opinion of a colleague that you trust and you like. You know, if somebody gives you a wee bit, you know, I would phone Walter Smith at Rangers and say, now the previous Dick Advocat would tell you nothing. You know, right. No cooperation from there. And then Paul Le Guen would tell you nothing. I think he's a nice enough guy, but he hadn't the same. Walter Smith, very helpful. He was the manager at Rangers. And the Celtic managers were always very helpful. In my time, Tommy Burns was wild. Joseph Venglos, Lou Macari, they were good and helpful cooperative managers. So that was a great bit of. So we played Hutchison up front on Southgate, and if the goalie Sutherland was clearing it, put it on top of Southgate, and Hutchison was in, and he scored the goal, of course. And the other change I made was lucky one too. We had I put Paul Ritchie in the Hampden game, man for man on Beckham. And he did very well. Beckham didn't do anything. But we didn't need a defensive player at Wembley. We needed to score. So I changed it, and I put an attacking left back against Beckham this time, and it was Callum Davidson. And it ended up Beckham was marking Davidson. I said, just you get up that pitch, and in front of him was Neil McCann. So we were good, but the best player on the pitch was the youngest player on the pitch at Wembley when we won 1-0, and it was Barry Ferguson. Now they had Ince and Scholes. Ferguson was so much better than these guys. So I've been on at length at that game because it's a favourite game of mine to beat England at Wembley. And the luck I had was Tommy Burns telling me to put Hutchison up front, and me luckily putting Callum Davidson at left back.
And then obviously you get another you get the other World Cup campaign in 2002. Were you planning on that being your last campaign, or was that what was your kind of thoughts at that point after Euro 2000? Were you planning on leaving at the end of that campaign, regardless if you qualified?
No, I wasn't planning on leaving, but if I felt ashamed if we weren't going to qualify. If I'd known that we weren't going to qualify for another 20 odd years, I might have not felt the same, you know. But I thought Scotland's used to qualifying. If I don't qualify here, it's a disgrace. Now nobody's telling me that. And when I told the staff before we played the game against Latvia that I'm going to finish after this, and they were quite well. Particularly Archie Knox was my colleague, and Archie said, "You're daft, you're daft." I said, "Well, sack me anyway." No, sack you, you know. Now, but I felt there's a shelf life, and that was 8 years. I had been with the national team, and the scrutiny with the national team is incredible. You know, the press scrutiny. So I thought I'll go, and I was getting a bit older then anyway. I wasn't as young as I was, so I decided to go after that. Towards the end of the campaign, I think, I'll be honest, if we'd been going to qualify for sure. Obviously, you want to stay on and see how it goes. But, it was a near miss again because we were so close to qualifying in that one. I mean, and it was the game against Belgium. We were up 2-0 at home. And then we were right through. Barry Ferguson was right through to make it 3. And a 1-1 with the keeper. And the keeper did a great save. But then, and they were down to 10 men and they equalised, that cost us the home game. It was a 2-2 draw at Hampden now against a good team, Belgium. The ground emptied in silence. Hampden, I've never known silence was depressed. And you thought you'd lost the game, but it felt like a defeat. And I was saying, oh no, I think in fairness I should get somebody else. And when the SFA appointed Bertie Volz, I thought it was an inspired appointment.
Yeah.
I wasn't asked. They did their homework themselves. But when you think about it,
he'd won the Euros with Germany, didn't he?
He'd won the Euros. He'd won the World Cup as a player.
Yeah.
He won the Euros. He won the Euros as a manager. I mean, he'd some CV. So that's disappointing from our point of view not to do better in that final tournament that I had.
And then obviously you go to Preston. And how did you feel about getting back into club football?
Well, I thought I was completely finished with football. I was retired, and I was at a dinner in Glasgow. I was talking at some event, and after this guy spoke to me, and he said, "Are you finished with football, Craig?" I said, "Well, it looks like it. I'm the technical director of the SFA. I was still working as a technical director. I said, like a club management job." And I said, "Oh, that would be nice, depending on the club." He says, "My name's Tony Scholes. I'm the chief executive of Preston North End. We're looking for a manager. And would you be interested?" I said, "Well, that appealed to me. It's not too far away, and it's a lovely club as it was." And I agreed. He phoned me a day or two later, and I agreed down and meet. He was the chief executive. Meet the chairman, Derek Shaw, and him, and I met them both. And I was very impressed with Preston, and rightly so, because it's a wonderful football club. And so they offered me the job. And I was delighted to go. And I went down to Preston. And quite coincidentally, the 2 best players are now working in Scotland with Motherwell. And Graham Alexander was the right back, and the captain and the centre half was Chris Lochetti, who's the assistant manager of Motherwell now. And they are wonderful guys, super guys. Lochetti was captain of Preston, and what a colossus he was as a player. He was David Moyes' most expensive signing, and he held the Preston team together. So, my job at Preston was to Davy had gone to Everton, and I went into Preston. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, I must admit.
It was what was your kind of favourite memories for your 2 years there?
Well, I had one full season. I had two. That's right. I had 2. A lot of good memories at Preston. David had left, and they sold. After he left, they sold the captain, and then Lochetti became the captain. They sold Sean Gregan to West Bromwich, which was a big blow.
Right.
And Davy had gone to Everton. Now they were middle of the league. David had done well in the past, a couple of years before. He'd been in the playoff final, I think. They didn't get into the Premier League with Davy, but he'd done very well at Preston. And then I took them, and my job was to kind of stabilise, which we did. But then I had a wee, how can I put it? I've never fallen out with MD in football, but I had a bit of a disagreement because we actually, I think one season, and I read one of the players wrote about it, we lost only 4 home games in the whole season, and we were a good solid team. And I was looking at the Preston team, and if they were in the Premier League in Scotland, they'd be right up at the top. That was what I felt the calibre of team they had. And I had signed with one major signing. I signed him from Hearts, called what do you call the big striker?
Ricardo Fuller.
I signed Fuller, and he was a sensation down there. And we were playing the start of the third season. I was there. We'd actually started quite well, and we were playing. This was the fourth game, I think, and we were playing Sheffield United at home, and it was a holiday, the September holiday, and the training ground's about 2-3 miles from the stadium. So I got up to the stadium for my lunch, and the chairman's there. He says, "Well, what's your team, Mr. Manager?" And I told him the team. He says, "No, Fuller's not playing." I says, "Yes, he is." I said, "We've just practiced this morning with him." He says, "He's not playing." I says, "I've picked the team and he's in the team." He says, "No." I said, "Wait a minute, what's the story?" He says, "We're selling him, do you not?" I said, "You never even told me." He says, "Do you not know?" I said, "How am I supposed to know if you don't tell me?" He says, "Well, you can't play him because if he gets injured, we lose the big deal. He's going to Harry Redknapp. Harry's signing him. Harry was the manager of Portsmouth in the Premier League." And I said, behind my back, he says, "Oh, I knew you wouldn't mind." I said, "I wouldn't mind." Because the crowd love him. He's the best player, and he scores for fun at Preston. And he said to me, that was the conversation. I said, "You might have told me." He says, "What have you got reserves for?" I said, "They're not at his level. If you told me and said, whatever you're getting for him, a percentage of the fee to get a striker, I'd have got a striker in." So that was the final straw. Fuller got sold really without the manager's approval. So I just said, "I don't fancy working here." And I just, there was nothing wrong with the club. They weren't sacking me. I just said, "I'm not going to continue because you can't do a thing like that to the manager."
Definitely. See, obviously as well, after you left Preston, you gave your pal Willie Davis a help at Derby as a consultant. Did you get a lot of pride in that, like talking to your old players about kind of jobs they'd taken in management?
Absolutely. Well, I brought Billy down to Preston. You know, when I took over, at the end of the season, Moisey had left to go to Everton, and they gave Kellen O'Hanlon, who was the assistant former goalkeeper of Ireland, and they gave him the job, the assistant's job. But he'd been temporary manager, and when I got the job down there, he was my assistant. They asked me would I take him. I said yeah, but he was not an outfield coach as such. He was a goalie coach. And then I said to the chairman, "Look, can we know I know a guy in Scotland who's a very good coach, absolutely outstanding." He says, "Aye, well, if you want to bring him, bring him." So I brought down Billy to Preston. And Billy's an excellent football coach. And he did well. Now, when I left Preston, I said to Billy, "Don't you leave. I've brought you down, your family down, you bought a new house and everything. Because I'm going, don't you go." And I actually went in and said to them I was going. But Billy, I says, "You stay." He says, "No, if you're going," I said, "Stay, Billy, please. You'll embarrass me if you leave." So the chairman says to me, "Well, we'll need to get a new manager." I said, "You've got one here." "Who?" "I'm not." He didn't want Billy. I says, "Come on." So it turned out that Billy took the team for the next few games. The team was good, but Billy took them that season. That team we had took them to the playoff final. And Billy, I think, went on five victories right away. But we knew it was they had a good team, and so therefore they had to give him the job. They had no option, and they got the job. He did so well that then Derby County came, and his contract was up and he went to Derby, and he took me as I had the best job in football. Wait to hear this title. You know, they now call him director of football, but I was football consultant, and that was a great job. And I was really director of football, but I was at the training every day, and I just it was a smashing relationship. Billy was the football manager, I was a football consultant, and I would be involved in the whole operation at Derby County, which is another very good club.
I think he got a raw time there, Billy, didn't he?
Aye, he did. He was harshly dealt. We won the playoff match. Beat West Bromwich to get into the Premier League. The chairman was in tears. And a very wealthy man. And he's saying, I can't believe it. I said, well, can you not believe, Mr. Chairman? He says, 52 million guaranteed. Now, that was then. Now, that 52 million is now 170 million to get into the Premier. So get any striker you want, get any players you want, but we were too late. We were the last team in the Premier League. So to get recruitment was difficult. So to get a striker, we needed. We took the Scotland international striker and the Welsh international striker. We took Robbie Earnshaw, and we took Kenny Miller, the Derby. But when it wasn't going too well, Billy's confrontational. Billy would challenge the chairman, hey, why are we not getting this and why are we not getting that? I said, Billy, cool the beans, It wasn't so much the chairman, it was the chief executive he didn't get on with. But, so they sacked Billy. Well, because Billy brought me, when Billy got sacked, I left. I said, I'm going, I'm not staying. And the chairman said to me, I want you to stay, Craig. I said, I'm not staying. He was a lovely man, the chairman, Peter Gatsby. But I didn't stay because it would have been disloyal to Billy. Who had brought me. So that's me finished again. I finished the school. I'm retired. So I'm at Preston and Billy's away. So I'm away. So I'm finished completely with football.
And then obviously you get pulled back in the Motherwell. When did you first hear of that interest?
Well, I've got to say something to you, Scott. Your research has been. I'm sorry that you had to do so much research. You can hear me. I just talk. You could have just put on the microphone and said, "On you go," without you having to research it. But I want to compliment you, and I've done many podcasts, but the research you've done has been outstanding.
Thanks very much.
No, seriously. So I came back up to Scotland, and I thought that was me finished. No, I beg your pardon, there was a job in between.
Right.
I was at Fulham. I was at Fulham because the assistant manager at Fulham knew me, and he recommended me to Chris Coleman. Stevie Keane was the assistant manager.
Right, okay.
And Billy McKinley was the reserve team manager at Fulham. So I went down there. I was international representative. In other words, I had a responsibility to recruit internationally. And I spent a lot of time in France and Italy and America. We got 3 players from America over to. They did well for Fulham. Fulham at that time were always in the top half of the. This Coleman had Fulham in the top half of the Premier League. So again, when he got the sack, I left with him again, and I come back to Scotland. So I had Derby and Fulham after Preston in England, and they're all good football clubs. So I ended up back in Scotland, and I was happily retired. And I'm living in Prestwick, happily retired. And I got a call from Bill Dickey, who was the vice chairman of the SFA, and he was the vice chairman at Motherwell. And they said they lost their manager. Could you take the job hold the fort for a wee while? Till we get a new appointment. I said, well, at my age, he says, no, you're all right, you'll do fine. And he says, I'm trying to remember who it was that they had. Jim Gannon. And Jim Gannon had had a bad run. And Motherwell I think they'd lost 5 in a row or something. And Jim had alienated the senior players, apparently. They'd get rid of all the senior boys, the Lasleys and the Hamills and the Craigens, and these guys were not. He was going to have a young team. They had some good young players. So they asked if I would take the Motherwell job, and Jim Cannon's, he has taken his staff with him. So there was an opportunity for me to recall Archie Knox. I said, I phoned Archie, and he says, I'm walking the dog. I'd rather walk the training ground. I said, right, you're in. So we went to Motherwell temporarily just to hold the fort for a wee while. And our job was to keep them in the league. It lost, but they were comfortable, and they had a very good team, a really good team at Motherwell. And we went there and we did well. We feel anyway. We got them into Europe, and we got them to the playoff in Europe, which was good going for a team like Motherwell. And I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And you mentioned Archie Knox there as well. Obviously, Alex Ferguson and Walter Smith, anytime they're asked about Archie Knox, they rave about just how good a coach he was. Just how good was he?
Hey, Archie, very good. Aye. On the training ground, excellent. He well, I don't think he worked as long with Alex Ferguson if you're not capable. Archie's very, very good training of football players. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. Smashing colleague to have. And he's loyal, he's hardworking. I've been very lucky. I had with the Scottish team, I had Alec Miller, who was the first, and then and he was coaching at Liverpool. He was coaching Gerrard and Carter and these guys and Michael Owen and at Liverpool. And then Benitez was the manager, and Benitez said to him, "You can't, when it's an international weekend, you can't go away. We've got young boys here. We need you to stay." So I had to Alex said he had to retire. He was my assistant with Scotland. And I never call him assistant, I call him colleague. I hate the assistant. So I had to get a new colleague. So Archie was the one I decided to ask. And Archie came as my colleague with Scotland. But you see, Alec Miller, he was dealing with the Gerrards and the Kellickers and the Michael Owens. And they were young boys at the time. They weren't in the Liverpool first team at that time. So he brought them through and did very well. And he rated Rafa Benitez as a very good manager at Liverpool. But anyway, I get authority to bring Archie to Motherwell. And I think we did pretty well at Motherwell, if you don't mind me saying. I think if you look at the Motherwell managerial records, I think the best record of any Motherwell manager is David Hay. But they were in the league below. And David. Now, I think the next best in the Premier League was ourselves, because not only did we get them from losing all these games, we got them into Europe and got them to the playoff in Europe. And then, of course, that maybe attracted Aberdeen.
Yeah, that was an interesting one, Aberdeen, because you were working without a contract at Motherwell at the time, and you changed your mind. You first of all refused the Aberdeen job. Just talk us through that whole process of how you kind of how it turned around.
Well, at Motherwell, I didn't sign a contract at Motherwell. They asked us to help out. So if I had signed a contract at Motherwell, I'd never left Motherwell. Right. Because I don't break a contract. But I didn't sign the contract because it said I was not in charge of the youth. The youth coach had fallen out with the previous manager and got a watertight contract. He was in sole charge of everything from the under-20 team down. So if I wanted an under-20 player, say, for a cup tie, I could have been overruled by the youth coach according to his contract. I know he wouldn't have done it, but because I knew him, and he's a smashing youth coach, Gordon Young. He's now assistant manager at Cove Rangers. Now, Gordon was the youth coach. Because of that contract, when we were doing well at Motherwell, we were then offered a contract. We just went to help them out till they found a manager. But then we got offered a contract. Now, the contract the money wasn't an issue at all. We never looked at the money. I mean that. We looked at the job spec, and the job spec, you're in charge of all football matters from under 20 up. So under 20 down is the sole responsibility of Gordon Young. So I said, could you change that? And we'll sign it. And it was Leanne Dempster, who was the chief executive. She never got back to me. So we just kept working away. And we kept doing very well. We went up to Aberdeen, beat them 3-0. It was embarrassingly easy at Aberdeen. And, and of course, one of the Aberdeen directors says to me, am I right in hearing you're not in contract? I said, no, I'm not in contract, but it's a smashing club, this Motherwell, I'm enjoying it. Next thing, I got a call from Aberdeen. So, and I immediately said, we have a far better team than Aberdeen. I'm not going up there. But then when I told Archie, and then Alec Ferguson phoned me, you're daft. Aberdeen's a great club. I think maybe Stuart Mill had phoned him and says, phone Craig. I changed my mind. And there was no increase in money or anything. It wasn't any more money than Motherwell. It was just that the potential at Aberdeen was greater. And our job was, when we went to Aberdeen, they were bottom of the league, right at the bottom. I mean, they played 16 games and had 10 points. I mean, they were right, and they'd lost 9-0 to Celtic, and 5-0 to Hearts. I mean, that was the team we inherited, and the job was keep them up, and that was it.
And then you do really well there as well. Like, was it just? Did you just feel as if after that would be your last job? Like you were definitely retiring after that?
Yeah, well, I think so at my age. I think I should have retired maybe a bit long before it, but I thought this is. I'm old enough now, and I'll tell you what. In the training ground up at Aberdeen, in a winter's morning, if you've got a sore knee, or if Archie had a bit of arthritis in his hip, it can be really icy up there. So we decided we would finish up, and at the end of the season. So I had a meeting with Stuart Mill, whom I liked and respected, a good manager, a good chairman. And I said to him, like, Archie and I are thinking at the end of the season, you don't need to go yet. I said, no, I think we do need to go. And then he said, well, would you stay in another capacity? I said, if you wish. So I was very flattered that he asked me to stay as a director. And would you be involved in the recruitment of a manager? I said, yes. So I was involved in the recruitment process, and I stayed as a director after that. And I got to hasten to add, I'm no longer a director because there's a new regime.
And how much do you still like? Do you still tune into every game you can? Do you still love the game?
Yes, I still. And well, I was asked to do the job of club ambassador at Aberdeen, which necessitated me being at every game. Well, it was a privilege to be at every game, home and away. So I go as if the new owner got rid of 4 directors, and I was one of them. But he asked me to stay as the club ambassador, which really is a nice role for someone of my vintage, that I keep in contact with any supporter in hospital, or sadly if there's a funeral, or I would go and have a look at the youth team. And they've now got a ladies team as well up there, and then they've got a midnight league and a disabled group, and I'm patron of Scottish Disability Sport. So I go and I watch the disabled football as well. So it's a very flattering job to have, to be the club ambassador, and they're very good to me.
Brilliant.
So the new regime, well, there will have to be another new manager coming. I'm sorry to say, because I hate to see managers losing their job.
Yeah. And then obviously we'll do this round called quick fire questions, where I just ask you some quick questions. You all right with me asking them?
We should have been doing quick fire questions the rate I speak. Yeah. Yes, I'm happy to do quick fire as best I can.
The best player you've ever managed in your career?
Well, if you could assistant managers, it would be Kenny Dalglish.
Right. Okay.
He just 1 or 2 caps left to get. I think he's got 102. And Andy Roxburgh was the manager. And Kenny, I'll give you a quick smile about Kenny, when he passed the ball to me in training. He knocked the ball to me and I flicked it up and I miscontrolled it. And I said, give me it again, Kenny, I'll get it back again. He says, you can't get back what you never ever had. So, but he's got a great one-liner, great one with the one-liners, Kenny. A lovely guy, and the most outstanding Scottish player. Alec Ferguson's opinion is that Dennis Law is the best ever Scottish player.
Right.
But maybe that's because he was Manchester United and Kenny was Liverpool. But I think Kenny is the best player definitely that's been in the dressing room when I've been in the staff.
Brilliant. The best player you've ever seen live?
Well, it's a toss-up between Maradona and I think I would go for Ronaldo. No, not the Manchester United Ronaldo, the other Ronaldo, the big striker Ronaldo, the Brazilian striker. I think he's the best player I've seen live. And Bobby Robson had him at Barcelona, and I phoned Bobby when we were playing Brazil. How do we stop him? He says, "You don't." He says, "I've had the best strikers in the business, and he's by far better than anybody."
That World Cup, it was unbelievable, wasn't it?
Aye. So I think he's the best I've seen in the flesh.
Brilliant. Favourite away ground you've ever been at?
I like the old-fashioned grounds, to be honest. I love Ayr United's ground as a small ground. But if you're talking about a real away ground, I mean, I think the Maracanã in Rio.
Brilliant.
I was over there. We weren't playing them, and I was doing commentary.
Right.
I was working for the BBC in the World Club Championship when Manchester United were there, and they played games at the Maracanã. It was fantastic. I like the San Siro. It's good. And Glasgow's got 3 good stadia. I think Celtic Parks are fantastic. Ibrox is the same, and the Hampden. So I mean, we needn't be embarrassed at all. And down in England, Preston's a nice stadium, and for atmosphere, Aston Villa.
Brilliant.
Sorry, I'm going.
Not at all. Could sit and listen all day. A youth player, obviously you spent a bit of time with the youth teams. A youth player you thought would make it that just didn't for whatever reason?
That didn't make it.
That didn't make it. That was playing in the youth teams that you took to the final and the semi-finals. Who came out that team did you think would go on and would do really well that just didn't?
Well, there was a young guy, John Lindsay from in the under-16 team. I thought he would be a midfield player. I thought he would have made it. He didn't. You've caught me out with that question. The other, I thought Booth and Jess were 2 brilliant under 21. Now they did make it. Jess was a high sale from Aberdeen, and Scott Booth did very well also. But they might have. I think they even might have been better, but they were good. The under 21 team that had Phil O'Donnell was in it, and Alec Ray. The midfield was very good, and of course Duncan Ferguson. he was a terrier, a warrior rather, in the under 21 team. You see the under 21 opponents would look at him and say, "Oh no, look at this guy." He didn't score goals for Scotland. I don't think he scored for Scotland first team. We didn't give him enough caps maybe, but he didn't score. But he scored. He was a warrior in the under 21 team.
Brilliant. Favourite film?
Well, I'm a football guy, so I Shot at Glory was Robert Duvall with McCoist in it, and it didn't make it big time in the cinemas, but I really loved that because I knew most of the guys in it.
Yeah, it was Airdrie guys, wasn't it?
Aye, it was terrific, and John McVeigh was the manager, along with Robert Duvall. Terrific.
Brilliant.
McCoist was the star of the show.
Brilliant. Your best friend in football?
Well, I think there are a few. I think Archie Knox more recently. When I actually lived with Archie in England because he was coaching at Bolton and I was at Preston, and we went together to Motherwell and with Scotland, Motherwell and Aberdeen. But way back, Willie McLean, I'm still very friendly with him. So, Willie McLean, I would say, I think I've got to also, I'm friendly with quite a few guys, particularly in Ayrshire, Ross Mathie, Frank Coulston, Jim McSherry, these guys. But if you to say Knox is probably, I call him Knox, it's probably my closest ally, Willie McLean and Knox.
Brilliant. Final question, best moment in football?
I think when I saw the Scottish team line up for the anthem, in the Parc des Princes in the opening game of the World Cup, that moment was the proudest moment, because I looked along at the team and I used to say to them, I was a bit of a stickler for being smart. Every jersey's tucked in, the stockings are turned over the same, and that's the way they had to be. And every player singing the anthem, you know, and if some of these anglers were to teach them the anthem, you know, or I would teach the under 21 boys. So I was very proud to look along that line and see, you know, your hair was standing on end. And then, of course, if you add to that, when Collins slotted the penalty against Brazil, that was another. These two moments were pretty emotional for me.
Brilliant.
But I'm not an emotional guy, to be honest. But I was emotional when I looked at the team, the Scotland team. I would not say my team, I just said the national team, the Scottish team, our team. I was really proud.
Brilliant. Craig, it's been an absolute privilege and a pleasure to talk to you. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Scott. I think I was a bit verbose there. Get it away. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Get better real soon. Yeah, I'ma just do me, you just do you. I swear it's gonna get better real soon. Don't let anyone tell you what you should do. I got a clear view. We're gonna make it soon.